Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 273. I'm the type of person who eats all the popcorn while they're still going through the trailers. Mongo Wilder.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, Indie Film Hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by Blackbox. Blackbox is a new platform and community that is all about financial freedom for filmmakers like you. If you join Blackbox, you will be transformed from being a worker to being a maker of your own content. And you'll be making steady passive income from the global market. Blackbox currently allows you to upload your stock footage once, get it to many global agencies, and then allows you to share that passive income stream with your collaborators. Whether you want to submit old footage that's been sitting around in your hard drives or create brand new content, Blackbox is for you. It's really quite revolutionary. With Blackbox, filmmakers can concentrate on making great content while Blackbox takes care of all the business BS. Just visit www.blackbox.global to find out more. And today's show is also sponsored by Indie Film Hustle TV, the world's first Netflix for filmmakers. If you want more information about the service and want to sign up for early access, head over to ifhtv.com. Now, before we start today, guys, I wanted to let you know that the Indie Film Hustle shop is open. Just head over to ifhstore.com or at the top of indiefilmhustle.com. There's a link for it. And there will be our merch store, all of the Indie Film Hustle hats, t-shirts, inspirational filmmaking t-shirts, and iPhone cases and stuff like that we put together for you guys, the tribe, after you guys have been hounding me for years now to do it, and I finally got around to do it. So again, if you are interested, it really does help support me and supports what I'm doing. We don't make a ton of money on it, dude, trust me, but I just wanted to do it for you guys. So head over to ifhstore.com. So let's get into today's show. You know, I've been a movie fan as far as long as I could remember, and I loved going to the movies. But every year we hear these articles and stories and videos about, the movie theaters are dying. They're going to be gone the way of blockbusters soon. And, you know, there's evidence on both sides. So I wanted to get someone on the show to kind of talk about the realities of what movie theaters are doing, what they're doing right and what they can improve on, what the experience is like, and where do we as independent filmmakers fit into the plan of the theatrical experience. Because trust me, you know, when I had the toughest times in my life, I would go to a movie theater, especially like at, 1 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning screening, and just sit there sometimes by myself and just, it's kind of like my church. I would just sit there and think about what was going on in my life. Sometimes the movie would inspire me. Sometimes the movie would just, take me to a place where I needed to go. And that theatrical experience, you can't get that at home, no matter what you do, especially nowadays with the IMAX and so on. So today's guest is Phil Contrino, and he's from N.A.T.O. No, not that N.A.T.O, the other N.A.T.O, the National Association of Theater Owners. And we go into a very frank and honest discussion about the movie theater experience. And again, where we as independent filmmakers fit into that world. And you'll be surprised at some of the answers we come up with. So without any further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Phil Contrino. I'd like to welcome to the show, Phil Contrino. Did I do okay?
Yep.
How you doing, Phil? Thanks for being on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alex.
So you work for N.A.T.O, not that N.A.T.O, but the other N.A.T.O.
I live in Washington, D.C., so that's a joke I hear quite often.
I'm sure you do. Which is the National Association for Theater Owners. And I'm so glad to have you on the show because I think a lot of, my listeners and people in general just think like, movie theaters, they'll be gone the way of blockbusters soon. And I personally don't think that, but I was raised, with movie theaters as a wonderful experience. So we're going to sit down and kind of talk about theaters, the theater experience, what you guys are doing, and how things have changed since the days that I was a kid going to the summer box office to watch some movies. But speaking of the summer box office, how do you think the summer box office numbers did this year from your point of view?
It was a fantastic summer. I mean, and especially comparing it to last summer where the movies weren't connecting. People just weren't excited about it. And there were these death of movie theater articles that come out every 2 years or so since the invention of television in the 50s.
Right.
And then look at what's happening this summer. And the movies are just working across the board. And it's not even just the blockbusters that are performing incredibly well, like Incredibles 2, which is
like $1 billion, right? Didn't it make it's insane.
Oh yeah. It's $1 billion movie, Jurassic World, the sequel to that, another $1 billion movie. Those movies have been working really well, but then the content in the middle, something like Crazy Rich Asians, and then even on the lower end of the spectrum, documentaries. It's been a great summer for documentaries. Won't You Be My Neighbor, and Three Identical Strangers. So everything across the board this summer has worked. And it's funny because last summer everybody was saying the movie theaters are dead, nobody's going anymore, streaming has killed movie theaters, blah 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 blah. And then this summer, they're not saying that. I don't know what has changed in terms of in consumer habits. Some of the summer. I mean, are people streaming less? Of course not.
They're streaming more. Actually, every year they're streaming more and more. There's more.
Exactly. Yeah, and this year it's one of the best summers in history.
So that's I guess at the end of the day, it's about good movies. I think because it is I have a family, and it does get a little pricey sometimes to go to the theater, especially if you want to take the whole family. So it's not like the olden days where you could just go and take a chance on a movie. I think nowadays people are more cautious. Like they got to hear that Rotten Tomatoes thing. They got to.
The consumer is more educated, is the way I would put it, right? And you reference Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, that can make or break a movie.
Easily.
And is that a good thing or a bad thing? To me, it's neither, right? Because for Rotten Tomatoes, it boosts the movies that are really good and they take off in a bigger way than they ever have before. And movies that don't work, they die quicker. It's just the marketplace really kind of delivering a verdict a lot quicker than we've ever seen before. Right,
exactly. And it's not the olden ways. And I think the studios are maybe learning. I'm not sure if they are or not, but they're learning that you can't just do the spectacle anymore. You need to do story. You need to do the new Mission Impossible that just came out, which was insane. And it was not only a good popcorn movie, but it was just a good movie. And the crazy.
Yeah. Well,
go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, looking back, even 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the studios could get away with hiding a dud. They'd get at least a weekend out of it. And that's just not the case anymore. No. And there's a lot of blame even on Rotten Tomatoes, but look, even if Rotten Tomatoes didn't exist tomorrow, there's still Facebook, there's still Twitter, there's still the internet, period, right? And people are going to find a way to tell other people what they think about the content that they're consuming. And the flip side of this is obviously there's so many movies that you can point to recently that just exploded and did way more than anybody would have ever expected. Whether it's last September.
Oh my God, it was
this year.
Yeah, it was insane when it came out. I was like, how much did it make?
$123 million opening weekend. Nobody ever thought a horror movie could do that. And that's because the reviews were good and the online enthusiasm.
And the trailer was awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. More people get exposed to the trailers, even if they maybe didn't go to the movies for a few months leading up to it, they certainly saw the trailer, online.
It's interesting. It's interesting that what you say in regards to the social media aspect of things on the Rotten Tomatoes is, when I was a kid, when I was growing up, it was word of mouth. It was a much slower way of getting the information out that a movie sucked. Or, sure, you got the reviewers and you had critics, but people were mistrustful of them, for the most part. But slowly but surely, you could get that opening weekend. You could get a weekend out of it because it took time. You could get Friday night, you get Friday, you could get Saturday, and then Sunday would be the telling tale if it was going to last or not. And but now, I mean, before the damn thing even opens, you've got Rotten Tomatoes, you've got everyone telling you everywhere, oh, this was great, this sucked, this is great. It's remarkable. So I think it's like you said, it's a blessing and a curse at the same time, because what makes it can hyper explode a film into a good, blow it up within a second, like it or those or crazy Asians, or it can kill it like a Justice League.
Yeah, and that's why I'd say ultimately at the end of the day, it's kind of a wash, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's neither bad nor good. It's hard to make a blanket statement about it. And depending on the year, I think it can be, it can be really good or it can be potentially bad if the movies aren't working in a specific year. I think you look at 2017 and some of those movies just had really bad Rotten Tomatoes score, really bad buzz in the summer. And, that wasn't good. But then you look at this year and it's the complete opposite, where so many of these movies are getting really, really well reviewed, even for, a franchise like Mission Impossible, which has been around for a while.
Was it
now.
the fifth or sixth one? I don't even remember.
I think it's a six. Yeah, you kind of lose track a little bit. That's a movie where people might have said, oh, I've seen so many of these, what can they do new? And then the reviews came out and they were just glowing and people said, okay, I'm going to pay attention to it. And it's massive.
Right. Yeah. Last summer was just abysmal movie summer. I mean, movies were just not really connecting in the least. And at the end of the day, no matter what platform it is, whether if it's theatrical or streaming, it has to be good nowadays. The consumer is just so much more educated than they were before. We're so savvy in regards to media, much more than we were even 10 years ago.
Right. And you can't make any one weekend or 1 month or even a quarter and make a blanket statement about any industry, right? Because what happened last year, the summer was bad, but then you look at from it through basically the end of the year and things, the box office was massive. And then especially at the end of the year when you had movies like Last Jedi and Greatest Showman and Jumanji, whoever thought Jumanji almost got $1 billion worldwide? You know what I mean? So
it's insane.
It showed that there was this pent up demand, right? That wasn't fully satisfied in the summer, but then people said, okay, you're giving me the content I want to see. And this is great. And then you look at how that extended into this year and it's just staggering. I mean, Black Panther,
that was one saw
$700 million movie opening in February, which again, talking about, the way audiences view things, there was this notion 10, 15 years ago where, you can only open the big movies in the summer and the holiday season. And that's it. That's the only time we're really those are the safest times. And that's completely gone.
Right.
Completely.
Yeah. January and February, aren't those kind of like dump months?
That's what they were considered. And that's completely out the window. I mean, movies in January now are doing incredibly well. And it's not only just the spillover from December, but there's a lot of examples you can point to. The first one that jumps to my mind is Split. That opened in January and did incredibly strong business. And then, February, you've had things like Lego Movie, Black Panther. March used to be not exactly a big month. And then the Hunger Games movies came along and Alice in Wonderland. The dynamics completely changed. People don't look at the calendar and say, oh, it's March, I can't go to the movies right now. I'll wait till December.
Right.
It
doesn't really work that way anymore. Now, how do you think this new generation growing up, the millennials kids, that are growing up literally on their phones and tablets, and that's where they learn to consume their content, and they're not going to the theater as much, the young kids as much, or just don't have that magical experience that maybe you or I did growing up. And what do you think that's going to lead the whole industry as this generation gets older?
Well, I would disagree that they're not going as much.
Okay.
We've done studies and also the MPAA and others that look at their enthusiasm for the movie going experience, and they still really embrace it. And especially they embrace IMAX and premium large format. And if you think about it, it makes sense because their lives are on their phones, right? They're spending a lot of time there. I mean, I don't have teenage kids, but I talk to people that do, and they say they won't even watch the TV They'll consume things on their phone and their tablet. But the idea of them going to experiencing something in a big way, I think is still something they're really responding to. And they're definitely responding to things like reserved seating.
Oh,
they
God,
love it.
thank God. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for that. Seriously. Thank you.
We can't take credit for it. It's all our members. But yeah, that's connected in a big way. And, and also the food options that they can get when they go to the movies. It's more customizable. The soda machines that you can pick your different flavors and everything like that, and not just popcorn anymore. So I think it's a myth that younger generations aren't going to the movies anymore. And if anything, I mean, they're the ones that are really on the front line when something crosses a cultural threshold, like a Black Panther, where it becomes a must-see movie that weekend. Those are the people that are going to see that movie, and they're tweeting about it and posting on Instagram and everything like that from the movie theater lobby.
So it's basically Hollywood's job to get asses in seats, and it's your job to make those seats extremely comfortable and have a wonderful experience, basically.
Yeah, I mean, that's what our members try to do. I mean, they don't have control over the content. They have control over the experience. And I think that's what people are finding now when they go to the movie theaters, is that it's not the same experience that it was 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. There are massive changes, and people are really responding to that, because you look at, our members that report numbers publicly, and the amount of money they're taking in from concessions is just going up because they're innovating in that space.
Let me ask you a question. This just came into my head. Do you think in the future would your members, theater chains, eventually start to try to create their own content? Kind of like a Netflix model or something like that in the future? I'm just throwing this idea. I'm just floating a balloon.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of reasons, and there's the Paramount consent decrees, which is a topic that's back in the news now. But I don't know. Never say never. And I mean, the thing is too that alternative content is big, and by alternative content I mean content that isn't viewed as a traditional movie, whether it's the opera. Yeah, sure. People love going to see the opera in movie theaters. Esports, which I mean, still to me, I don't get it. I don't know.
But someone does.
You go watch people play video games, but a lot of people, a whole generation is growing up loving that content, and a lot of our members like Cineplex are big on that, and
rock concerts as well, things like that.
Yeah, rock concerts. Yeah. It just goes back to the communal experience. That you can sit at home and watch a lot of this content, by yourself, but it doesn't compare to going out. And I think you talk about younger generations, and I really think they're hitting a breaking point in some way of being isolated too much, right? And I think there's going to be a rebellion against that, and I think we're going to see that start to happen in more and more over the next 5-10 years.
I agree. That's a very interesting way of looking at it, because you're right, because they're just so like I've heard this said, and I think it's a great statement, is that social media brings people who are far away close, and you push people who are close far away. That's a really good
way of putting it. And I mean, there's just certain social norms. I mean, you always have to go on a first date, right? Like good luck saying, hey, I'm interested in talking to you. Let's sit at home and watch Netflix. Like, that's a total buzzkill. I mean? It's like,
that's an awkward first date.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, my parents are upstairs, by the way.
My parents are upstairs. Let's sit here and watch Netflix for our first date.
Yeah, like total buzzkill.
Right. Exactly. Now, can you discuss a little bit how you see the theatrical experience and the streaming experience coexisting? Because, like you said earlier, theaters have been in the grave since television. Every time a new platform or new format comes out, everyone says no one's going to the movie theaters anymore because of this, because of TV, because of Blu-rays, DVDs, and now streaming is the latest. How do you think they can coexist?
They do. I mean, it's a very symbiotic relationship in many ways. I mean, we did a survey recently with Ernst & Young, right, where we polled 2,000 moviegoers. And what we found is that the people that are going to the movies, 9 or more times a year, which is double the national average, which is generally accepted to be 4. They're also spending 15 hours a week or more on streaming. So this notion that if you're spending a lot of time streaming, it's taking away from your movie going.
No,
it doesn't equate to me, because people that love content consume it a bunch of different ways. They're going to watch something on their cell phone. They're going to binge a show on TV, but then they also want to get out, during the week or on a Friday, Saturday night and have a social experience. People, again, you nailed it on the head. This narrative is nothing new, but look at, people say that streaming is killing movie theaters. I say streaming is disrupting what's happening in the home. I mean, look at the most popular television shows on network television right now and compare them to what the most popular shows on network television were 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Oof, the numbers would not be pretty, I don't think.
No, they wouldn't.
It's really changing the way people consume content in the home. And you think about the way you pick content on streaming platforms, right? There are your series, and then if you're looking for a movie, what is the one thing that's going to make a movie on a streaming platform stand out? It's going to be a successful theatrical run. Instantly, you're going to look at that. You're going to say, "Oh, I didn't see that movie when it was in theaters.
Right.
I missed that," and it stands out to you. And you can't put a price on the prestige that having a successful movie in theaters gives you.
Oh, and there's no question. There's no question about it. Living in the indie world that I live in, I mean, I'm from the generation that still wants to have a theatrical release for my movies, but it's becoming more and more difficult to do so for independent films. Which brings me to my next question: is there space for independent film in the future of movie theaters in the movie theater experience?
There absolutely is. I mean, if you look at, it's interesting because you look at the data from last year that the MPAA put out.
Mm-hmm.
There were 777 movies released theatrically. It was up 8% from the previous year, and 12%. There was a 12% increase in indie releases. So people are finding a way. There are plenty of distributors out there, and there's plenty of markets where indie film can work.
Mm-hmm.
So I think and I understand the challenges. I mean, I get it 100%. I'm not in the business of making independent cinema. It's tough across the board making movies, period. But
mm-hmm.
I think it's a goal that it's important not to settle for just streaming, right? Because we talk to directors all the time who say, my movie went on streaming and it just died, right? I don't feel anything from it. I don't get data about it,
mm-hmm.
And it's very frustrating to hear those stories. Whereas even if you have a small theatrical release and it instantly boosts the value of content. Yeah.
I agree with you. Look, I have my first feature was bought by Hulu. I have no idea how it did.
Yeah.
I have no idea who saw it, how many people saw it, how many people downloaded it, how long it was watched. Nothing. I have no idea. Generally speaking, most people in the theater, when they sit down to watch a movie, they generally don't leave. More than likely, the higher percentage, unless it's,
hopefully.
unless it's The Room.
I've seen that 3 or 4 times at midnight. So
it's one of my favorite films of all time. I love that movie. It's so bad. It's so great. Now, let me ask you about the kind of like an elephant in the room when it comes to theatrical, the subscription services,
Sure.
and how that's kind of changing the way people think that can happen, because everyone's so used to now a subscription service because streaming made it so popular. Now everything's a damn subscription. We have 100 subscriptions on our credit cards every month. Do you think there's a future for it? Do you think what's happened in the current marketplace has done anything to help or hurt that? And is that something that you think that will even be a thing?
Well, yeah, subscription services have existed in Europe for a bit now, right? Mm-hmm. So it's really, a lot of people are treating it like it's something new. It's not. So it was only a matter of time before it found its way over here. And, for us, it's just a matter of making sure that any subscription service that's out there, look, we're a trade association. We don't comment on any specific one or dictate anything to do with pricing or anything like that, or we'd all go to jail. But we just want it from we look out for the industry. So we just want them to be sustainable, right? We don't want angry moviegoers.
Right.
And again, not going to comment on anything specifically, but that's important, right? You can't have, if people are looking for these bargains, which is what a subscription service is, you don't want them to be turned off if it doesn't work. So yeah, there's a huge amount of potential in it. And you look at, what's happening with now some of our members who are rolling them out, like AMC and Cinemark, and Alamo is experimenting in one of their markets. It's really about capitalizing on the brand loyalty that they have, and I think appealing to customers who were maybe price sensitive and are looking for a bargain. You reference having a family. I mean, I think subscription services are something that families will really respond to. Who want to go to the movies.
Yeah, it's like the old dollar theaters,
Yeah, which, it's unfortunate that a lot of them have gone away. But,
That was, I used to go to the dollar theater constantly because it was just the best deal ever. Like, for $1 or $2 or $3, you would get to watch, a movie in a theatrical experience. Yeah, it might be 5 weeks old, but who cares?
Yeah.
It was a way for the production companies or the studios to get just squeeze that little bit extra juice out of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Just a little bit more momentum. Yeah.
Just a little bit more juice before we went out to DVD.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think we've kind of decided that streaming is not going to kill theatrical.
I don't think it will. I mean, at the end of the day, people need to get out of the house, right? And they want the experience. I think of, so many movies that have come out, this year or last year, when streaming is really on its, climb, right? It's picking up momentum and everything like that. And yet there are these huge word of mouth hits, and there are movies that have come out recently that I can't imagine having just experienced at home, right? And you look at the cultural significance of something, right? 2 movies that you can point to, Black Panther and Crazy Rich Asians. You have the director of Crazy Rich Asians saying, Netflix offered us a bunch of money. We wanted this in theaters, but because we wanted to make a point, right? We wanted this to feel like a cultural hit. And would that have connected in this? Would that feel as big as it does right now?
No.
Had it gone straight to streaming? Absolutely not. And same thing with Black Panther. It was an important moment for African Americans and representation, and they had one of their first. I mean, people forget about Hancock, but that wasn't exactly
Blade. Don't forget Blade.
Yeah, and Blade, but again, not really role models in the same way Black Panther is.
Right.
And it was just a huge moment for the culture. And if that had gone straight to streaming, we wouldn't have that. We would have lost something.
Is 3D still a thing?
It is, but it's not, it's not where it was when Avatar came out. I think it's kind of normalized or not normalized. It's just kind of leveled off. Right. And internationally, I think there are certain markets that are, that enjoy it more and that are still very enthusiastic about it. China, South Korea, for instance, they love it. But here it's just kind of, it has its fans and it has people that don't like it. I think what really people are responding to, and like I referenced the national average being four times a year for people going to movies. People really love IMAX and the premium large format experience.
It's amazing. It's an IMAX for me. I don't mean to cut you off, but when I go to the theater, I always go to IMAX if I can get to IMAX, or like AMC has that digital ultra vision. I don't even know what it's called.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's almost IMAX, if not close to it. And it's a wonderful, wonderful experience. If I'm going to spend X amount of dollars to go to the theater, I want an experience. I want a ride.
Well, yeah. And that's, that's what the people that go 4 times a year are saying, basically. I'm going to go 4 times a year. And when I go, I'm going to get the full experience. I'm going to get the biggest screen possible. I'm going to go and have a nice meal and have a beer. You know what I mean? And that's good for the industry, because again, they were going to go that many times anyway. and now they're getting more out of the experience, and hopefully, some of those average 4 times a year people have such a great experience that they go 1 or 2 more times.
I mean, I want the audience to kind of understand the business model of movie theaters, because I think a lot of people don't really understand how like the splits are with the studios and on the weekends and things like that. And I know it's different. I'm not even sure if you can talk about it, but it's something that they should know and understand, that movie theaters as a business, getting movies into the door, especially on opening week. I think is an opening weekend they get the least amount of return, or how does that work?
I mean, we don't deal with terms specifically, but that notion that it's a scale and you get less, that's basically gone away, and this is publicly reported to information. But I mean, the notion that a lot of people have that movie theaters make most of their money off of concessions, they're not wrong. It's a much bigger profit margin, right? And it's always going to be the case.
But you guys have, but theaters in general have now upped their game to a way that, I mean, I walk in and like there's a full bar and restaurant, and the food options have changed so dramatically, other than just chicken fingers or just popcorn and chocolates, which was when I was coming up, you can never even think about doing. I worked in a movie theater when I was growing up, so I saw behind the scenes of how that stuff was done, and it was like, candy and popcorn. That was it. And now you're talking about gourmet foods that are coming out. It's insane.
And I mean, look, the margins on them are obviously not as high as popcorn. I mean, popcorn's, you don't have to be a PhD in economics to figure out that
Coke and popcorn.
Yeah, exactly. But what happens there is that people feel the value is a little bit higher when you've had a meal, right? And you've paid maybe $20 for a really good meal with a beer. Right. You walk out there thinking, okay, that's what I would have spent at a restaurant. And that's why when you go to movie theaters and you get those options like a meal and a beer, they're priced very similar to what you would encounter at restaurants. And that's deliberate from a consumer satisfaction standpoint.
And may I say, the seating has gotten better.
People love that. I mean, people love it. And it was weird for us as an association because, we would get all these questions all the time of, you're putting in less seats. Isn't that going to be catastrophic for the industry? And it's not. I mean, it creates, look, if you're on the fence about going to see a movie on a Friday night and it's a popular movie, you better decide pretty quick and get your seat, right? Or else, somebody else is going to get the seat that you wanted. And people, it spreads the movie going out the rest of the week, right? I mean, a lot of, I look at AMC or a lot of other chains, Marcus in the Midwest, they do a $5 discount night or whatever discount price on a Tuesday night, and that's really popular too. And people will come out for that instead of maybe rushing out opening weekend. So, but yeah, the seats are a huge hit. And again, maybe somebody who hadn't been to the movies in a year or two and comes back now, the experience is completely different. And then that changes their mind about it entirely.
Now, can you tell me a little bit about N.A.T.O and what N.A.T O does?
Yeah. So, I mean, we represent exhibitors in all 50 states, and it's a total of over 33,000 screens. And then we're the National Association of Theater Owners, but that's kind of misleading because international exhibitors can also be members. And we've got members in 96 countries right now. So we're really kind of
the N.A.T.O.
That's right. Yeah.
N.A.T.O.
There we go. We'll work on the branding, but yeah. Global Association of Theater Owners. That's GATO. That doesn't really work either. But yeah, so there's a lot of things that we do. I mean, we've got CinemaCon, which is our big convention that is every either March or April, depending on the year, where a lot of the major studios show up with their content for the upcoming summer and beyond. And it's a room full of exhibitors. It's at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, where we're in the same Coliseum that Celine Dion plays in on a regular basis, and it's just kind of gets the industry excited about what's coming up in the year ahead, and that's a big thing. And then we've got an office in DC and an office in LA because there's a lot of issues related to government relations and state laws that we advocate on behalf of our members. And then, in LA, we meet with the studios a lot and represent our members on technology issues and, just everything that's important to making sure the experience is as good as it can be, for customers.
Now, where do you think the theatrical experience is going to go in the next 10 years?
That's always a really interesting question. Yeah, it's a tough one to answer too, because the consumer really tells you what's going to happen, right? Take 3D, for instance. When it first came out, there were some people that were really bullish on it, and they said, everything is going to be in 3D. I remember Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Oh yeah, I remember people went nuts.
But then the consumer said, no, pump the brakes a little bit. We want to see certain movies in 3D. We don't want to see everything in it. But in terms of, look, we're making giant leaps in terms of, as an industry as a whole, the kind of content that's being played in theaters. And I think that's a good thing. And on the studio side, they are really paying attention to the need for diversity. Moviegoers are telling them pretty clearly, we want more Black Panthers. We want more Crazy Rich Asians. We want more, we want to see ourselves on screen. We don't want to see movies all the time for, 16-year-old white boys in the middle of the country. Right. It's got to diversify. And that's going to lead to a healthier marketplace. And then, I think we've only scratched the surface in terms of alternative content. As, esports continues to gain momentum, movie theaters are in the perfect position to capitalize on that. And I think we'll see other different, forms of alternative content pop up. We look at too closely and pay close attention to what's happening with virtual reality and, its cousin mixed reality or augmented reality, whatever you want to call it. And that's interesting too. Some of our members are experimenting with putting virtual reality in their lobbies. And, it'll be interesting to see where that goes. And in terms of mixed reality, like the kind of content that Magic Leap is working on.
What is that exactly? Can you tell me?
So it's mixed reality is, you're sitting in a living room and they've done demos that they posted online where you're sitting in your living room and C-3PO and R2-D2 pop up in your living room and you've got the glasses on. They're not as bulky as the virtual reality glasses. Mixed reality, the Magic Leap's glasses are much more compact. Not quite on the level of 3D glasses, but nowhere near what the clunkiness of virtual reality glasses. So to me, that's interesting because, again, it goes back to this inherent debate about experiencing something on your own in your living room or experiencing it with a crowd, right? So for me, mixed reality, that debate comes into play. And if that's going to take off, I think there's a natural fit for it in movie theaters. It's almost, the natural extension of 3D in a way. It's something that's jumping out at you and instead of a 2D image. So that's intriguing to me. It's something we'll follow. But at the end of the day, I think the interest in premium large format is going to continue to remain strong.
So are we going to walk into movie theaters in 20 years and walk onto the holodeck from Star Trek?
Predicted that. George Lucas could be. He came to our event, CinemaCon, in I think it was either 2011 or 2012, and he said eventually you'll just all be watching things. You'll go to a movie theater and it'll be holograms. Would I bet against it? Absolutely not. I would never bet against
George Lucas.
I never bet against George Lucas, and I would never bet against any new technology until the consumer has a chance to weigh in on it, because history is full of people saying, you can look in the early days of cinema and people saying sound in movies. Who the heck is going to want to watch
color? What is this?
Nobody's going to ever like that. So I don't want to be one of those people who said, no, that's not going to take off. I don't want sister to look at me in that way.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question that I ask all my guests. What are 3 of your favorite films of all time?
Oh, wow. Okay. Anything by Stanley Kubrick, and it depends on.
That's my favorite guy.
Yeah. I mean, this year, I'd say it's a toss-up between 2001 and Clockwork Orange in terms of my favorite from him. And this year's been great because with the 50th anniversary of 2001,
yeah,
I've been able to see it a few more times in theaters. Exactly. Like not even close to watching your home. Not even close. And and it sells out too. I live in DC, and AFI has one of their theaters here.
Yeah.
And they play that movie almost every year, it seems like, in theaters, and it sells out on a consistent basis or damn near close to it.
I mean, if you go to the Beverly,
exactly. Yeah. It's like that movie just plays and plays and plays, and it's 50 years on.
Well,
so that's one of my. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I'm going to throw in my favorite. Is going to be Eyes Wide Shut.
Nice. Okay, that's an interesting choice.
Everyone always like, what? And like, if you look at it different, but I do love The Shining. I love Clockwork Orange. I love Full Metal Jacket. I had the opportunity to actually watch a 35 millimeter print in a theater at the Chinese theater, actually, a Full Metal Jacket with Matthew Modine.
Oh, nice.
In the audience, and which was the coolest thing ever for all you Kubrick heads out there. The guy who's sitting right behind me was Kubrick's long-time assistant. The star of the new film, I forgot his name, but the guy who was in the new film Film Worker. Yeah. Oh, I shook his hand afterwards. I'm like, I just got to say, I've seen you in every behind-the-scenes documentary that I've ever seen.
That guy's dedication is just staggering. I mean, I don't blame him. I would have
given up your entire life to work for Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah, Kubrick. Yeah, absolutely. But
all right, and a couple other films.
Yeah, I mean, The Insider, I'm a huge Michael Mann fan. I feel like The Insider is just a perfect combination of really great story, and I think few directors are as good visually as Michael Mann.
Mm-hmm.
And then I probably have to go with something from Alexander Payne. And again, that depends on my mood, but either About Schmidt or downsizing has really grown on me. I wasn't crazy about it when I first saw it, and then I've watched it a few more times. And I'm like, okay, I get what they were trying to do now. And
he was out there with downside. He was out on the edge on downsizing, but I actually enjoyed it. Now, where can people find out more about what you do at N.A.T.O?
I mean, our website's natoonline.org, and I encourage anybody to ever come to CinemaCon. I mean, if you're a film buff or if you're an independent filmmaker, and you want to know more about this industry, and it's just a great experience. It's truly an event for people who look at movie theaters as their church, and it's good to be surrounded by people like that. So,
thanks, Phil, so much for coming in and talking to the tribe about the movie-going experience, which is not dead. It is not dead, and I don't think it will be anytime in the near future. So thanks again so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alex. Anytime.
I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. If you want to get links to anything we talked about in this episode, please head over to indiefilmhustle.com/273. And guys, if you haven't done it already, go to ifhtv.com and sign up for early access to the world's first Netflix-style streaming service for filmmakers, screenwriters, and content creators. I cannot tell you how excited I am for you guys and to see what I've been working on. There's so much content there for you guys to dive into, learn, and be inspired. So definitely check it out. And that's it for another episode of the Indie Film Hustle podcast. And as always, keep that hustle going. Keep that dream alive. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.